update. Joining us now, calling in from Washington, is Congressman Michael Guest. Thanks for coming on, Congressman. Good to see you.
Man, thank you for having me, Gerard. Hope everything is going well back in Mississippi today.
Absolutely, sir. So, what do you think? It was a big night last night, of course. There in the House of Representatives, President Joe Biden comes out and I thought delivered a fairly inspiring set of remarks concerning the situation in Ukraine. But what we've been talking about on the program this morning is that he immediately and abruptly pivoted to the Trump tax cuts in his domestic agenda. Like, what?
Well, you're exactly right. The very beginning of the speech where he talked about America standing with Ukraine, when he, recognized the ambassador of the Ukraine, when he talked about the bravery of President Zelensky. I think he came out and really focused on the one area which there is clear bipartisan support. Republicans and Democrats are united behind our stand to assist the Ukrainian people as they are fighting for their freedom. But I will tell you that after he then pivoted to domestic topics, I found his speech to be very uninspiring. I think what people were hoping is that the president would inspire us, that he would be able to set forth concrete plans on how he intended to deal with many of the domestic issues we're facing: inflation, the rise in violent crime, our unsecured borders, and the flow of fentanyl into every one of our communities. And I think the president's message really fell flat once he pivoted from what we're seeing in Ukraine to domestic issues. And I think many of us, at least I know I did personally, felt like that the president could have done a much better job and could have really laid out some concrete plans and given us a roadmap as to how he intended to turn the country around and how he intended to put us back on a path of prosperity.
Congressman, it sounded to me like, from a domestic agenda perspective, he really doubled down and, in fact, to some degree, extended his Build Back Better plan without actually calling it that. I mean, it was just he's packaged it up with different kind of talking points, but that's what it was, plus some other stuff he wants to do with these tax credits for EVs and for weatherizing your home. That was his solution to deal with the rising price of energy.
You're exactly. When he talked about inflation, he said inflation is the top issue that he wants to address. But then, as he began to talk about potential solutions, what I heard him say is we need more taxes and we need additional spending in Washington. Both of those, I think, would have the adverse effect. If we tax individuals, we tax businesses more, then they automatically have less money to spend. And then, if we are continuing to pour money into the economy, needless spending like we saw under the American Rescue Plan, which every Republican lawmaker opposed, is only going to extend, what we have seen now is a 40-year record high on inflation. You look at gas prices up over 50%, real wage increases, or in this case decreases, for the American worker have dropped 8 of the last 11 months. The very staple of our American diet for most of us, beef, pork, chicken, is up an average of 15%. And so Americans every day are feeling the impact of inflation. And instead of the president addressing that, you're right, he wants to talk about tax credits for weatherizing homes. He wants to talk about increasing taxes. And you're right, even though he didn't call it Build Back Better, he mentioned every program at some point last night that was in the Build Back Better plan and encouraged the Senate to make sure that they pass that legislation.
Yeah, absolutely. And Congressman, he frequently, and again last night, invokes this talking point that there are 17 noted economists that say his Build Back Better plan would not, in fact, would be anti-inflationary and would actually reduce the deficit. Do you think the American people are buying that? I mean, that defies logic.
Yeah, I hope they're not. I'll tell you that myself and my Republican colleagues don't buy that. Additional needless federal government spending is only going to increase inflation, and it's going to prolong the crisis that we're seeing right now. I mean, clearly there are things that we need as a federal government to spend money on, right now as we see what's happening in the Ukraine. We must make sure that we are properly funding our national defense, but many of the domestic programs that this president wants to create are programs that the progressive left is advocating.
Yeah.
And we cannot tax and spend ourselves into prosperity, Gerard. You and I both know that, and I believe that every American knows that by increasing taxes and increasing spending, that is the wrong solution to this problem.
He just seems to be doubling down on it. And I don't feel like that, just as an American citizen, I don't feel like I heard any concrete solutions to the things that I think are most staring us in the face, and that's the rising cost of everything, rampant crime across our country. And the other thing, Congressman, comment on this, please, sir. Did I not hear him say that, hey, we got the border under control or something to that effect? What was that all about?
His idea of the border under control and mine and your idea, I think, are extremely different. What he didn't talk about is the 2 million immigrants who have come across this border in the year that he's been in office. What he didn't talk about is the fact that fentanyl, the most dangerous of all narcotics, fentanyl seizures were up 134% last year.
Yeah.
What he didn't talk about was that the leading cause of death for individuals 18 to 45 is drug overdose, many of those associated with fentanyl. And so I think it's clear to all Americans that this president has either been unwilling or unable to secure the border. So anything that he says, whether it be last night or anything he said previously or going forward about the border being secure or his policies being successful along the southwest border, I think we can all agree that cannot be taken as true, and the president is clearly only saying that as a political messaging tool.
Sure seems like it. Were you surprised that Senator Joe Manchin sat on the side of the aisle with the Republicans? That was weird.
Well, I was glad to see that, know, and I think Senator Manchin has a lot of Republican friends, and I will tell you that he is someone that I'm extremely glad is in that position because, I mean, really he has served and stood in the gap against many of the things that the Democrats have been trying to do. But for Joe Manchin and Senator Sinema, we would have seen the filibuster abolished.
Yeah.
We would have seen Democrats pass legislation out of the Senate with a 50-50 tie, and the tie being then broken by the vice president. And we would have seen many of these trillion-dollar spending bills, which Joe Manchin has helped Republicans hold those in abeyance. We would have seen those become law. And so Joe Manchin probably has more friends right now in the Senate on the Republican side than he does in the Democratic caucus. And so it was nice to see him sitting over there next to Senator Wicker, and hopefully some of the good conservative values of the Republicans will rub off on him when he left that House chamber.
He is certainly not amongst the favorites of Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who in her address, I mean, without calling their names out, that being him and Senator Kristen Sinema from Arizona, didn't call them out by name, but she took a pretty hard shot at them for being obstructionists.
Well, and I tell you, it's funny when you have a Democratic president who delivers the State of the Union, and then there are two Democratic responses to the State of the Union. So you had the progressive response, which Rashida Tlaib delivered, and then you had the Congressional Black Caucus response, which Congressman Allred delivered. And so it is clear that this Democratic Party in Washington, D.C. is fractured, that they disagree with the president on many of the major issues, and and we see that it has caused great difficulty in Congress and the Democrats being able to rally behind certain pieces of legislation. There's continual infighting between the progressives and the moderates, and I think that was clear last night in the fact that we had two Democratic responses to a Democrat President's State of the Union address.
Unprecedented. Congressman, we appreciate, I know you got to go, we appreciate you taking some time out to call into the program today, and thank you, sir, for your service and your representation for District 3 here, my district right here, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon. Take care, sir.
Thanks, Gerard. Have a great day.
You too. Middays, we'll take a break right here from the Element Wealth Studios.